Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 84 of the WatchRolling podcast. The WatchRolling podcast is a veteran-owned podcast that focuses on horology from a veteran's point of view, as well as shares valuable veteran resources with the watch enthusiast community. My name is Jason. I'm your host. If you're new to the pod, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. This week, we sit down and chat with Bryan Braddy of @BadArtNiceWatch from Instagram. This is an awesome feed that highlights Bryan's ability to capture the souls of some of our favorite timepieces through his paintbrush. He does so through a series of watercolors. You can check out my Grand Seiko SBGX 335 back there. He did it for me. I paid for it. It is not sponsored or anything. I just thought it was such a cool thing to capture a piece that I love and, the stories behind it. We're going to discuss these unique paintings and their stories and then try to answer the question, what's the grail paint job for a guy who paints watches? Because I got to think there's something that he really wants to paint or a series of things he really wants to paint. So before that, let's get the sponsor stuff knocked out. The pod, as always, is brought to you by the Anti-Watch Watch Club. The Anti-Watch Watch Club is a 501c3 charitable organization that utilizes a drop-style culture to provide societal, financial, humanitarian relief to first responders, LEOs, active duty, and veterans. They do throw through a drop-style culture with stuff like T-shirts, hoodies, rash guards, Nalgene bottles, the whole nine. Nobody there draws a salary. 100% of the proceeds go to charities, and you can check them out at antiwatchclub.org. Great group of guys doing good stuff for people. The pod is also brought to you by Mushi Watch Straps. Mushi Watch Straps is a veteran-owned strap and accessory company that produces all kinds of well-built and fairly priced nylon straps. The ribbed nylon is my favorite. The gray one is just a perfect strap, 20 millimeters. They recently released some new 18 millimeter canvas straps, so I invite you to go check them out for the people that love 18 millimeter lug widths. And then don't forget to use the code VET10 at checkout for 10% off your entire order. That's Victor Echo Tango 10 for 10% off your entire order. And without further ado, let's talk to Bryan and find out how he makes his brush work. Hello, Bryan, and welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks, Chase, for having me.
How's everything going?
Going pretty good. I can't complain. How about you?
Oh, I can't complain, man. It's going. So I gave you a cool intro on the show, and I'm really happy to have you on because I feel like I really enjoy your artwork. But why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? Well, first, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we'll do a wrist check.
Okay, that sounds good. So my name is Bryan Braddy, also known as Bad Art Nice Watch. Not a whole lot there. Husband, father, 2 little girls, paint watches on the side, collector of hobbies, collector of watches, one of the co-chapter leads at Red Bar Raleigh. That keeps me busy, but that's about it.
Nice. Well, yeah, and that's for everyone that's joined the show. I think that was the thing that I first caught my eye is I just there's a couple interesting things. The first thing you see on your feed is your artwork, but then you realize all this other cool watch enthusiast stuff behind it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like not only an artist, but I think a pretty experienced watch enthusiast, and I think all that comes together in your artwork. But before we get too far along, let's do a wrist check. What do you, as a guest, what do you have in your wrist today?
So this is a new purchase for me. So this is a Rolex 16570, the Polar Explorer 2.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I just got this less than a week ago, so it's not left the wrist yet.
Oh man, it's beautiful. That's Thank one you. Of my the Explorer 2 is one of my grails, and yeah, I'm gonna have to sell some stuff to get to it, but it's beautiful. How does it wear? The comfort level and everything.
It is fantastic. I've been chasing this one for a long time, and it's probably one of the most comfortable watches I have. I mean, it totally slides under the cuff, incredibly thin. Kind of wears in that 39-40 millimeter range. So it kind of just falls away as soon as you put it on. It's great.
Oh, wow. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I've been watching the prices, and I've been watching them go, dip down. And I'm like, man, It's going to get to the point where one day I'm just going to have to pull the trigger regardless of what I've sold ahead of time. It's just like, yeah. Pretty snazzy. It's and that's the older generation, right? The 16570 is the older generation.
The 5-digit, the previous one from this one.
Yeah, I'm still learning a lot. I have a Rolex book around here somewhere. I've been reading up a lot on. I'm trying to get better educated on it. But
nice.
Congratulations, man! Beautiful piece.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
On my wrist, I have my Grand Seiko SBGX 335.
Love it.
big old beefy boy, and I have the associated artwork from you back there
to go with it.
Oh man, I can't wait to get it on the wall. I feel bad that it's not up there, but yeah, it's a well, we talked a little bit about yourself, husband and father, collector of hobbies, and founder of co-chapter lead of Red Bar Raleigh. So let's get started real quick. How did you get your start painting watches? Because I think that's the obvious question to ask here.
Yeah. So probably the story really goes that I want to say this is 2021. My oldest daughter, who was, I think, 5 at the time, maybe 4 at the time, we were sitting at the kitchen table and we were just doodling, and she said, "Daddy, draw what you like." I was like, "Okay." So of course I drew a watch, and honestly, it just kind of sparked something in me. I used to draw a lot when I was a kid, and it just reminded me of how much fun it was. And I had an Instagram account dedicated towards watches, just like everyone else. And I was getting really frustrated and not happy with my photography. It just felt like kind of cumbersome and burdensome at that point. So I was like, this is kind of fun. This is silly. Let me just draw watches and just post this on the internet for people to see. And I had always wanted to try watercolor. So I literally never picked up watercolor before, except for those cheapy kits that you get, as a, middle school or elementary school kid. So I bought that and I just started painting and I started posting it. And I thought it'd be funny to call it Bad Art, Nice Watch, because it was bad artwork of watches that I liked. And it kind of took off. I want to say that people started enjoying it. I had tagged a few people, in the posts, and they reshared it. And all of a sudden I was getting followers, kind of just joining in on the fun. And then I had someone ask me about purchasing a piece probably within the first week and a half of me posting something.
Oh, wow.
And that really, it blew my mind. I ran downstairs and I told my wife, and I was like, "Can you believe this? Someone wants to buy this." Yeah. And so that kind of took on a life of its own at that point. So.
Yeah. Well, that's funny too, because watercolor is not an easy thing to pick up on. And,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I probably would have picked something better.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is though, it's cool because there's you can tell there's a natural talent there, because, I do my homework on people before I interview them. And I went back and looked at, some of the earlier ones, and I think they're good because I can't watercolor. Like, A, I don't have the patience for it, and B, I can't. And my wife does watercolors for fun, and I looked at him like, man, Brian's got it down, because you start to notice like the shadowing and the, like reflections and stuff like that. So it's like, man, so it's got to be cool to be able to, like capitalize a little bit on something that you enjoy doing, but also actually get that, muscle memory and the technique down, and you know what I mean? And it's pretty, cause I remember I looked at mine for a while. I was like, man, this thing's freaking good. It's really good. But
I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no problem. So, how many paintings do you know off the top of your head how many paintings you've done?
I was honestly just looking this up. I have a few in the backlog that I have to paint, but I am roughly at 375-ish. So just shy of 400 at this point.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
That is freaking insane.
It's hard to believe.
And it's been going on for two or 3 years, roughly.
Yeah. So I think my first post was late October 2021. So yeah. We're on just over 2 years.
That's banging out some that's banging out some paintings, man.
Yeah. I mean, the crazy thing was just looking at numbers, I want to say that I completed roughly 80 pieces between the first time that I posted and January 1st, 2022. So
oh wow.
It really took off, and I wanted to jump on that train as fast as I could. Which meant that I was painting a lot in that very short amount of time. Yeah.
But I know what it's like, man, when you start to do something you really enjoy and you can actually, make some coin off of it. It's like a bug, you know what I mean? Like you get it and you feel, you start thinking about it all the time. Like, oh, I could do this or I could do that. And the next thing you know, you're at work for like 20 minutes and you're like, oh, I haven't even thought about what I'm supposed to be doing at work, kind of thing. Not that we do that, because we don't do that.
Exactly.
But, so almost 400 watches, right?
Yep.
There's got to be some favorites that you painted. So I've asked you to share 3 favorites.
Yep.
You can share them in any order you want to, but tell us about your favorites and why they're special to you.
Okay, so I know I sent over 3 for us to kind of talk about.
Yeah.
And I think the order that I put them in is probably the best order to talk about them. So I think there's 3 major milestones in watches. And not all the ones that I like are because of how it turned out, or even the subject for that matter. The first one it was a Patek World Time. I think it's reference 2325. So this is like the 1950s, 1960s World Time with the enamel dial. And it was specifically a Eurasia dial. and it has that really cool flame hour hand. This is by far probably one of my favorite Pateks. Not like I'm a Patek collector or anything like that. I don't have that kind of money, but it's a absolutely gorgeous watch. And I was really excited when someone commissioned me to paint it. I remember really trying as hard as I possibly could. And I was just really proud of how it turned out. The shading in the globe and, or the map, the topography, and everything kind of just came out better. Sometimes things click, you know, you're just kind of in that creative zone and stuff starts flowing and it just comes out a little bit better than you anticipated. So that was one of them. And I was just really happy with how that came out. I was proud of that one at the end of it.
Awesome. Yeah. It's, I looked it up. I mean, it's a really sharp piece. So your next one.
The next one, I think this is where the story bug started to hit me. And I realized what I'm doing is beyond me. It's not just the art. So I was commissioned by a lady. She wanted to gift a painting to her friend, and her friend had received a Cartier Panther from her mother, and her mother passed away. And it was a beautiful yellow gold Cartier, and this lady was terrified to wear it. She's worried about losing it, worried about damaging it. Obviously, there's a lot of emotions and memories wrapped up with that watch, and so it just kind of lived in the safe. And her friend, who was also into watches, wanted to give her something that she could look at and remember her mom, remember the watch, keep it on the desk, keep it in a room somewhere, even if she wasn't going to wear the watch. So that kind of touched me, you know, especially when someone loses a friend, a parent, a spouse, a child. You know, it's just, it adds a lot of weight and gravity to the piece. And so, not saying that I don't try hard with every single piece that I do, but when you have that kind of ruminating in the back of your mind, you just want to kind of add a little extra something to it. So that one was special, you know, kind of just going into it, you knew like, oof, this is, you know, this has got some heaviness associated to it. So that was, it really kind of opened my eyes, I think.
Yeah. And it's crazy too, because that's something we always talk about as watch enthusiasts, right? Like not every piece has got a story in it, but sometimes like a piece ends up getting a story by accident, you know, and you kind of like the piece before, but now with that story, you're like, man, you know, it's like, you put it on and you're taken to that time, or maybe in this person's case, she's taken to multiple times with her family member, you know, and then having it on the wall is a lot easier than having it like on her wrist where she could break it or something, you know.
Exactly.
It helps bridge a Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Number 3.
All right. So number 3, so my goal for 2024 is I want to tell stories with my pieces. I've had a lot of people ask me to paint watches, and I try to share some of that in the comments. I started doing voiceover last year, and talking a little bit about it wherever I could, but I'm really soliciting from my clients now to, if they want to, if they feel comfortable with it, especially with me sharing it, can you tell me about this watch? And I started off this year with a really good one, in my opinion, which is this Rolex Datejust reference 16233. It's a two-tone 36 millimeter Datejust with diamond indices. But the story behind is really what really drew me in. So I was commissioned by this guy named John. His father had recently passed away, and this was his daily watch. He was a doctor in, I want to get this right, Louisiana. Yep, in Louisiana. And John just went on to tell me about how, you know, they didn't come from much. He was this country doctor, and, you know, he worked really hard. Everyone loved him. And he inspired a lot of people, like, and within his own children, several have become doctors. They're married to doctors.
Oh, wow.
And beyond that, you know, all these grandchildren, one of them is also becoming a doctor, had just gotten into med school. And so when he passed away, John and his brothers were like, there's only one of these watches and not really sure what to do about it. So John had commissioned me to paint the watch because he wanted a painting of the watch for himself.
Yeah.
The brothers had all decided that because there's so many of them, that the most logical thing for them to do was to pass the watch on to the grandson who had just started med school. There's only one, and it just kind of felt like that's the totem kind of being passed to the next generation, or the youngest generation. And so as soon as John actually received his painting, he was talking about how he kind of got a little choked up seeing it, and his wife, who is, very kind of doesn't crack easily, kind of also saw it and was a little moved by it. And so he ended up instantly commissioning 2 more pieces for his 2 brothers, because none of them were going to have the watch. Ultimately, it was going to go to the grandson. So that was a really special commission. Really was a 3-part commission, and exclusive for your listeners. I actually was reached out to by John's daughter, and she has a little twist to this story, in talking about how their grandmother, so the gentleman whose watch this was, she had a beautiful diamond tennis bracelet that all of the daughters and the granddaughters have worn on their wedding days. And so I've got 2 more pieces coming of this exact same watch. So it's going to be the watch, but it's also going to have the tennis bracelet wrapped around it. So kind of continue this on. So the Haynes family has obviously touched my heart with this commission specifically, but it's excited to see how this story has gotten so much bigger and how one watch really encapsulates so much more. So this was a special one for me.
It's pretty awesome, man. And, I'm going to tell you, we talked a little bit before, but like, when people say art is good, it's really subjective, right? Like, I guess there's objectively like some bad art, like, and I have my own feelings about that. Like, sometimes like painting a square and just leaving it in an empty space. I mean, take it or leave it. But, I've always felt like good art really evokes emotion, right? And it's different for each one of us, right? So that's the subjective part. But sometimes like when you see an artist who does a series of things, right? And, I told you this, like you capture something about these timepieces, right? Now, maybe it's like survivor bias or whatever, like those of us that have the pieces, but I don't think so, because it's like when I got mine back there and I looked at it, I was like, I instantly knew it was my watch, right? And like the characteristics of my watch are captured in this. And then because, my story with my watch, it's there. And I spent a lot of time at this desk doing stuff. And then, like, and I have a watch collection like anyone else. So I don't always have my Grand Seiko on, but it's a special piece to me. It's always floating right there. When I walk in, I get ready to do some work. Maybe I'm tired and I look at it, I'm like, nah, I'm not that tired.
Yeah.
This is fun. This is what it's meant to be. So that's awesome, man. I can't wait to see that. Can't wait to see that piece in that story, because, man, it's going to make that family really, really happy.
Yeah.
I think.
I hope so.
But, yeah, they're going to love it. Oh, you're going to nail it, man. It's going to be good.
I appreciate it.
So as a guy who paints a ton of watches, there would be an obvious question. We'll get to that one in a second. But what's your favorite piece from your personal collection?
So I have to say it's probably my Omega Speedmaster Professional. Funny enough, I don't have it here with me. I actually, that's the fun thing about being in Red Bar is we do watch swaps all the time. So I've got a buddy who wants to purchase one. So I have his Breitling and he has my Omega. But my Speedy Pro is probably the most, it's the most special watch in my collection. It was a gift to myself before my 30th birthday. I wanted a quote unquote luxury watch. I had plenty of Seikos and great stuff. But I just felt like, going into my 30s, I want one really special Swiss luxury watch. And so I sold a bunch of watches. I sold a bunch of gear that I wasn't using, my guitars. I sold, gaming systems. I sold everything that I could that wasn't bolted down, that was mine. And I scrimped and I saved as much as I could, and I was able to finally pull the trigger and buy one. And it meant a lot to me. And then also my wife and I were starting to try for a child. And so when she, got pregnant, it was kind of like, I knew that this was probably gonna be like my last big purchase for a long time. But then on top of that, I wore that when she was born, our first daughter was born. So it's got a lot of special memories wrapped into it.
Oh, nice. Yeah. It's, man, I didn't get a Speedmaster. I didn't get it until the first time I went to, shout out Finks. I went to Finks and got my Grand Seiko. I needed an extra link. And so I went there and they, they steam cleaned my watch and everything. But, the salesperson, she walked me around. And the first Speedmaster she handed me was the rose gold and green. It's green dot?
Okay.
It's a rose gold.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Do you know how much this cost?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know how much this costs. I don't even know if I feel comfortable holding it, you know."
Yeah.
But I got it. I got the Speedmaster thing, right? And I know it's not a Speedy Pro, but I got the gist of it, right? From some holding. I'm like, if this thing, which is kind of garish, the color scheme at the time, but I get it because it's like it's a proper watch, right? And
Yeah.
I know a lot of engineers that love that piece, man. Real engineers, like I'm talking like degreed engineers, and they love the Speedy Pro. They just all rave about it.
I mean, it is. I mean, objectively, I think it's one of the prettiest watches. There's so many interesting things to look at it. The lyre lugs are, I love them. You know, the step dial, if you've got one. I love the way that the matte finish will catch the light. So sometimes when you're looking at it, it looks totally grayed out, which is my absolute favorite. Some of those older pieces have, I mean, they still have the aluminum bezel. So some of those older ones have, you know, totally like ghosted out, which is looking fantastic. I mean, just from an aesthetics perspective, I think it's absolutely beautiful. The reason that I actually picked a Speedmaster was my grandfather, who I never met, was an aeronautical artist, basically. He would did a bunch of drafting for Convair, which is a contractor through General Dynamics out in San Diego. And so, you know, he worked on a lot of, I don't think he worked on the Apollo missions. He worked on, I think he worked on the Saturn V. So anyway, he worked on rockets, kind of drew up, you know, fuselages and all that kind of fun stuff. And so, you know, just as a little nod to, you know, a man that I never got to meet that I've always told that I would get along well with, but also from a creative perspective. And then also, you know, kind of just going back to my grandmother too. But so that's one of the reasons why I put it. So there's also, you know, some family ties as to why I picked it too.
Oh, that's awesome. And those aeronautical artists, man, my first ship was a carrier, and so there's all kinds of like the little paintings, right? So they'd have like the, you know, like when they had the finished products, so like McDonnell Douglas, like the F4 Phantom, you get the profile view of the plane, and they do it like in the original OG color scheme, right? And then, well, on the Enterprise, it was around for so long, they have all the plane portraits, right? And I'm not much of like an aeronautical. I appreciate planes, but I'm a surface sailor. But I've always loved those portraits of the planes because I feel like it's like a drummer who can play like in a slow tempo band. You know, they could let loose if they want to and just go crazy. But the discipline to make that beautiful of a portrait and keep it within like technical specifications and all that stuff is super awesome. And it's kind of cool because I'm pretty sure your grandfather knocked out some bangers. You know what I mean? Like some awesome artwork, but he had to do it within technical specs. And it's pretty cool. Oh, that's nice, man. I dig it. And a good piece. So
appreciate it.
Painting 400 paintings. We just discussed that almost. Do you have a grail paint job? And if so, what is it?
So funny enough, I don't. You know, I've got one of my good buddies. He's a lawyer, and I always ask him, you know, do you have a specialty? And he says, I do door law. And I was like, what's door law? And he's like, anything that walks in the door. And so I kind of feel the same way when it comes to commissions. You know, I'm not looking for anything. It's the story that I'm hunting. You know, it's kind of like a junkie that I get my fix on. You telling me, why is this special? What does this mean to you? You know, are you commemorating the birth of a child? Are you celebrating a wedding date? Are you, you know, memorializing someone who's no longer with us or something? So anyway, that's the story that really kind of that gets me. And I feel like my art is just a backdrop to that story. You know, we kind of really put these are like talismans. You know, we put so much into what the watch means to us. And we all have, you know, stories associated to our watches. And so by having the art to go with it, it's just helping further tell that story. So to me, I don't feel like the art's all that special. It's just further cementing the story that's already associated with that piece, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. And it's you know, like there's been cultures that believe you can capture that in it, right? Like you can, it's like the creepy version is you can capture stuff in mirrors, but the other part is you can capture stuff in a piece of artwork, right? The story can be there. It can be encapsulated in like, you know, like your kids end up getting some paintings and they have those paintings and they're like, no, that was grandpa's watch, you know, and grandpa, it's an instant trigger. Grandpa did this, and this and that watch. And I think it's pretty cool because, yeah, I think it's funny too because you mentioned something about a black dial, and
Oh yeah.
like I have a Tudor Ranger, which is
Mm-hmm.
going to become my wife's watch pretty soon because now that I have my Vertex, I really don't need both of them, and she loves the Ranger, but that dial, man, is sneaky cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like in pictures, you have to get just the right angle in pictures. There is a contour and a texture to that Ranger dial
Mm-hmm.
that most regular pictures don't pick up on, right? And it's just something cool, like when you're sitting there holding it and looking at it, you pick it up. But I thought about something funny, interesting. You talk about it's the stories for you. I think that you might have found the perfect job. It just dawned on me. Where most of us have to like hope we walk by someone like in Kroger or, you know, like Food Lion or any name store, and we're like, we see someone's watch, we're like, hey man, that's a pretty cool watch.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't know if they're gonna punch you in the face or be like, yeah, cool. People feed you their stories, bro.
They
Like you
do.
get to sit there and they come to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like a pizza delivery guy. You're like, oh, I'm getting a new story today. So you might have found the perfect side hustle.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm a junkie getting my fix.
Yeah. So do you have a personal grail? Like actual, not a painting grail, but a personal grail?
Um, yes. So I know you, when we were prepping for this, you had asked me, and I do have a grail, and I actually purchased that grail.
Oh
I know a
yeah.
lot of people think that grail means something that's like unobtainable from a price perspective. Yeah, I would love a Patek Aquanaut travel time. I would love a Longa or something like that. But I just, in my life, I don't foresee that ever happening. I could better spend that money a lot of other ways. But I was actually very fortunate that I found a watch it turned out that was my grail, and I was able to purchase it, and I have it here. So it is a Breitling Chrono Cockpit.
Oh yeah.
Let's see if I can get that to focus. There we go. Breitling Chrono
Yep.
Cockpit, reference A30012. So this is nicknamed the Gordon Ramsay Special. This is a mid 90s piece, kind of smaller. It's 37 millimeter. Chronograph, made famous by Gordon Ramsay because he wore it during Kitchen Nightmares. And kind of basically any time that he is on TV, there's a good chance that he's wearing this yellow dial. And I've been doing a kind of like a retrospective, just kind of like looking at my watch collection. Why do I like the things that I like? And I've realized that when I was in middle school, I'm dating myself here a little bit. The hot watch was a fossil blue. So everybody had to have a fossil blue watch. Remember, fossil stores were everywhere, and they came in those little fun tin cans. And I remember all my friends and my classmates were getting them, and I didn't have one. And so I asked my grandmother, and I was like, Grandma, I really would like to get a fossil watch. And she's like, okay. And so she took me down to Nordstrom's, and she bought me a watch, and it was this really cool fossil blue. I still have it, actually, with a silver dial and blue subdials. But
Oh wow.
I remember distinctly that there was a yellow dial version with blue subdials, and I don't know why, but I was gravitating towards that yellow dial.
Yeah.
I didn't get it, obviously, and I couldn't be happier with the one that I did get, but for some reason that yellow dial fossil just embedded in my brain, and I really wanted it. And later on in life, I saw Gordon Ramsay wearing this yellow dial chronograph that looks just like that fossil watch that I wanted when I was in middle school. And then I want to say it was probably late 2021 or early 2022. I was browsing Reddit or Instagram or something. And this guy that I know posted his, and he's like, I finally found it. I was like, oh my God, I did not know this existed. I mean, I knew it existed, but I didn't know anything about it. And so he was able to tell me the reference, what he paid for it, which was well out of what I felt comfortable spending on a watch.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, I mean, it's good to know that it exists, and I'll probably never be able to afford one, but it is what it is. So obviously, like any watch nerd, I have a bajillion searches out there, eBay alerts and Chrono24 and all that fun stuff. And I was talking to a buddy of mine who was looking at getting he's like, I want a smaller chronograph. I don't know. And I was like, oh, you got to check out these 90s Breitlings. They're the perfect size. And so I was literally typing in eBay the exact reference that I was looking for just to share, because they have white dials, they got black dials, blue dials, champagne dials. And they go for like $1,000. They're not expensive watches. And so I'm typing it in to go send a reference to him. And as soon as I hit enter, I swear to God, a yellow one had just popped up. and it was like $1,700. And I had just somehow had enough money in my account that I was like, let's do this. And so
Yeah.
I hit buy. Transaction went through. I was like shaking. I was like, I cannot believe that this is happening. And so I sent the link to my friend too, so he could go buy one if he wanted. But at that point, I had found this, and it is. I have searched high and low for information about this watch. I love it. The yellow, it makes me smile. It's like a perfect summer watch to me. Breitling yellow is just fantastic, but this watch just really, really speaks to me. Breitling cannot tell me anything about it. All I know is that it's a mid-90s watch. They didn't make many yellow dials. Apparently, they were kind of like the dog, and no one really wanted them, so there's not many of them. And then other than that, there's really, it's got the really fun slash link bracelet. So this is probably one of the most comfortable bracelets. This didn't come in the watch. I actually had to buy this secondhand. Another really lucky deal. I think I got this bracelet for like $300, and people are selling them for like $1,000. But yeah, everything about this watch just kind of like lucked into me. Like I just kind of lucked out, and everything has just been perfect. Matter of fact, there's one on eBay right now, brand new, never really worn full set, that someone's trying to sell for like $19,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
man,
I don't think I could even sell it if someone offered me that much. I'd be stupid too, but
it's sharp.
So yeah, I appreciate it.
Hey man, number one, the heart knows what it wants. Number one. Number two, like sometimes, there's a saying, one of our ships, the fortune favors the bold. And, when you're presented with that situation, I'm a firm believer that in that moment, you have to understand what divine providence is, and you have to just straight up start pulling triggers.
Yeah.
Right. Like don't go to the bathroom. Like do what you got to do right that moment to secure what you want to secure.
Yeah.
Because that's got to be like the biggest sign ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because talking about like the color scheme and how you remember seeing that yellow and blue fossil. For me, one of my pieces is the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Mm-hmm.
If I ever come across that Piaget polo, I don't even care that it's like 36 millimeters. I don't care. I don't care. I'm gonna buy it, because that is the first watch I ever noticed in my entire life, and I was like 12, I think. And I was like, man, that's such a cool watch.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since then, I've been like, if I ever see that Piaget, and I look up, Piaget all the time and look at the polos, but they haven't made a newer one like that. And, now they're a little more expensive, but
yeah,
still, that thing has always been etched in my 12-year-old like lizard brain. And I just sit there, I'm like, yeah, that thing's great. That's awesome.
It's an itch you just eventually have to scratch if you can.
Oh yeah. No, it's pretty sweet. Okay. So, back to some painting stuff. In your time as a painter, are there any traits that you feel tie the watch enthusiast community together?
So I sound like I'm probably beating a dead horse at this point, but stories. I think for me, I'm going to talk for me specifically. One of the things that I love about watches is what I call the Walter Mitty effect. So I don't know if you've seen The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Yeah.
I can strap on a Explorer 2, and even though I am just sitting behind a desk, it makes me feel a little bit more adventurous. I could strap on a Speedmaster, and I just feel like I'm going into outer space. I could strap on, a Seiko dive watch, and I feel like I could just beat that thing and go jump in the water or go jump in a lake or something.
Yeah.
There's something about watches that I feel like it's a projection of who you want to be. And so it kind of gives you that sense of whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a big aspect to me of that, not cosplay, but like,
No.
It gives you a little bit of bravado. It gives you a little sense of something maybe bigger than yourself. And then on top of that, the stories that go along with that, you end up starting to make memories with these watches. Where did you wear this watch? What were you doing when you wore that watch? How did you get that scratch? How'd you get that ding? I have a pretty sizable ding in the side of my Speedmaster that I was none too happy about. I was winding it. It was Christmas Day. I was winding it. And of course, of all the places that I could stand in my house, I'm standing on the hearth of my fireplace, and I'm going to put it on. I had it on a NATO. And so, you do the thing where you put it on and then you flip it over and you're trying to do the thing, and it literally just slips right off my wrist.
Oh no.
And it landed right on the case, right on the slate of our fireplace, and I'm let out a few expletives and looked at it, saw the nice little ding on the side profile, and I mean, fortunately, nothing was broken or anything was wrong with it. But now, I mean, you put my watch with anyone else's, I can instantly tell you which one is mine. So I mean, like, that's the kind of stuff, though, right? Like, that's a fun story. It wasn't fun at the time, but it's a fun story that you can kind of tell at this point. So I mean, all of our watches have stories. Whatever. Why did you get it? What did you do with it? Why do you have the scratch? I mean, all that stuff. So that's really, I think that's what ties us all together is we don't need these things. We have a phone, most of us, in our pocket to tell the time. We have digital watches that are cheap and easy to put on the wrist. You can have an Apple Watch. You can have all this kind of stuff. So we're choosing an anachronistic technology to put on our wrist. And that's for a reason. And I think a lot of times that's because we're romantics and we want to associate, to something else, or, we have a story associated to it.
Yeah. No, I can even, I mean, I understand what you mean, because like for me, it kind of bugs me that I didn't really know a lot about watches the whole time I had my military career, because I wish I had early on. I wish I had something other than a G-Shock, because I wore G-Shocks because they were affordable and could blow them, basically blow them up. And I was a firefighter in the Navy. So it's, that part I understand. The other part is, I wear what I wear now because they harken back to what I once was. And that's a difficult pill to swallow, because I'm pushing 50, and I still work out, try to be in great shape, but I'm damaged goods at this point, man. Like, let's be honest about it. Firefighting is a young person's game. And, you get to a certain point, but I wear stuff that evokes these feelings in me about what I used to do and the things I used to be connected to. And sometimes, like you said, like I'll be at my desk doing desk stuff, which is, it is what it is. And I'll look at my watch and be like, yeah, I was a BA one time, man. Like at one time, I was on my mountain doing my stuff, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And then, like you said, the last part, you got a bittersweet Christmas story, but like, the second you see that ding, you're like, oh yeah, Christmas in '99, you know what I mean, or whatever it is. And,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And, it stings a little bit, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's mine.
So,
it's my ding.
Oh yeah, and it's earned, man. You know what I mean? Like I think that's the coolest thing, man, about stuff, especially well-made stuff. And I don't care if it's boots, I don't care if it's a jacket, I don't care if it's a car, I don't care, it could be even your house. Things that are well made will take a beating, will still keep on working, and then they develop character over time, right? So every time my knees creak, I'm like, I just got a butt ton of character, and that makes me cool, kind of thing. But I feel it's the same way with these things we choose to enjoy and the things we choose to put on our body and wear, because there's no truer representation of who we are than what we choose. It's all a decision. The shirt's a decision, the pants, the socks, the books we have in our bookshelves. These are all conscious decisions. And if anyone chooses to pay attention, they can learn a little bit about you by seeing what's there.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, I've heard a quote somewhere. I don't know who said it, but good things wear in, bad things wear out. So, you want that patina, you earn that patina.
Yeah. Nice shoes, man. That really freaking hurt. Like the first, the first couple of months, man, you just got to break. You're like, oh man, eventually this is going to feel better. But,
you got to earn those.
So are there any traits? Yeah, you really got to earn it, man, because people are like, oh, they're not comfortable. It's like, yeah, because it's a leather insole, man. Like, it takes a minute. But are there any traits among enthusiasts that have surprised you?
We kind of mentioned this earlier, or this might have been before we got on, but Rolex is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And honestly, this is my first Rolex. This is the only one I own. And up until a week ago, I've played with them. I've seen them. I've loved them, but you don't realize what space they dominate in this whole culture, in our watch space. I mean, you hear about them. They obviously are incredibly important. And that just from the numbers and from, just peripherally what the news has to say about Rolex, how everyone always cares what they're doing. I didn't realize it. And I came face to face with this through painting nearly 400 pieces. Almost a third of everything that I've painted has been a Rolex. And from those, the vast majority are still Submariners and Explorer 1s. It's almost a tie neck and neck for the most commissions is one of those two models. So I think, Rolex it's surprising, but it's not surprising at the same time. Rolex is what Rolex is, but I think just what a share of our minds and our wrists Rolex really has, especially from just a painting perspective, that was surprising to me.
Nice. 40%.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get it, man. Like, and the funny thing is like when you sit and look and explore one the first time, right? Then you get it. And it's funny. Did you mention that too? Because like quick sidebar, we have a young guy at work that comes up to me at work and he goes, the young sailor, he goes, excuse me, sir, I heard you're really into watches. And I'm like, who told you that? Like, right. And, I'm busting his chops because, I'm retired Navy. And he's like, oh, I said, oh, yeah, I am. What's up? He goes, oh, I just want to show you my Citizen. And, he has a Citizen and it's nice. It's a blue Citizen, great watch. Mm-hmm. And I was like, he's like, yeah, and I got a Tissot that's getting serviced right now. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And he's like, I was just wondering if I could pick your brain. And I said, oh, yeah, whatever. And so I said, and he was interested in getting something. I said, hey, man, before you buy anything else, I said, I said, take out your pen, write this down on a sticky. And I told him about the magic of watches. And I told him about the wristwatch annual. Mm-hmm. And I was like, listen, junior sailors, and I may not have a lot of money, but spend $35 and get this Magical Watches book. And I'll tell you what, if you come back tomorrow, I'll loan you my copy of the Magical Watches and you can read it until yours comes in the mail. And he's like, thanks. And I said, listen, the one thing you really want to take is you want to go to the blue, like, what is it? Blueprint drawing pages and take a look at these timeless pieces, the ones that are the, examples of what a lot of people, they're the first ones. Explorer One, the Speedmaster, you name it, the Cartier tank. I'm like, you will start to understand where a lot of these other design inspirations come from. Mm-hmm. And I said, and you'll hear stuff like, oh, Rolex sucks, until you realize there's a bunch of models from Rolex that everybody draws inspiration from. Mm-hmm. And I said, to be objective, they can't suck if everyone's copying them.
Yep.
To each their own, but you can't, you really can't. And to the point of when you see an Explorer One for the first time, or you see a Submariner for the first time, you're like, okay, I get it. Mm-hmm. The first time I held a Sea Dweller, bro, I had a moment. Like, and that's the thing. Like, if I'm being honest, I'm starting to feel Sea Dweller love more than Explorer 2 love. Mm-hmm. Because some of my military buddies I talked to they're like, bro, do you even need a GMT? And the only reason I have one is because I keep it on a time zone for a place that had a lot of meaning in my life at one time. And it's a place that was a pretty formative year for me as an adult. And, that's what that GMT zone sent to. It's not sent to my hometown, or here. And then even then it's like, I'm never going to go back there because it's not a country you can just roll up in and go hang out. You know what I mean? Like, you just can't go there and hang out. So it's interesting. You just see those things from Rolex and you kind of understand it. And then you can see how, even if someone had someone from a generation before them where Rolex, that was the aspirational piece. So someone's grandfather, farm country doctor has a Rolex, everyone in the family wants to get one. It makes sense. And I think that Rolex does a good job of actually, making those like you say, stories. They get them out there. Mm-hmm. They get them out there and they let us tell their stories for them, man. Most of the time. Yeah. We're the best word of mouth marketing program Rolex could ever get,
Yeah. Well, I mean, but before we move on though, Jason, you just proved my point. You start talking about that GMT, and if I had drawn that, it might be pointing to +6, +9, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But without your story, it doesn't mean as much. But if you start talking about, the reason that it's pointing here is XYZ, it matters so much more. It matters so much more.
No, it's true. And it's like, that's why I like, the one thing I try to learn really early in this hobby, right? And, so, for those you don't know, like I used to paint miniatures before this in COVID, and I love painting and, Warhammer stuff, and people can make fun of me all they want, but, I loved painting. but it's kind of a money suck. At a certain point, I got so much stuff painted, and I mean, you know, it's what am I doing? But I still love the lore and everything. But anyways, my point is that I just forgot what my point is. It's real late, man. I've had a long day. Anyways, my point is painting's great, watches are great, Rolex is great, but telling the stories are what really matters. And it's it could be anything that you have that has those stories. But anyways, let's get on to the next question. I'm not even going to edit that out because I want the people to see like we have full-time jobs, and man, like your brain's fried sometimes by 21:47 tonight. But so one of my favorite segments, sometimes I do pet peeves, and then sometimes I do an unpopular opinion. And whenever someone has a money paying base, I try not to do pet peeves because I learned, you know, I don't want a customer to be like, hey, that was me. You know what I mean? So an unpopular opinion. Can you share an unpopular opinion you might have about wristwatches in general or the watch culture?
This may be a hot take, and I hope I don't piss people off or lose a bunch of fans on this one. So really, for me, I struggle with micro brands. I understand where micro brands sit. They are fantastic. They are creative. They're nimble. They're agile. They're doing things that big brands can't do. They're beautiful. But for me, and I'm going to preface this, I'll probably say this a couple times, this is a me problem. They compete in a space that I have limited funds. I like I mentioned, I'm the sole breadwinner in my family. I have 2 little girls. I've got payments. I got 4 mouths to feed. Yeah. And because of that, my watch budget is not big. And these micros, they compete in a very competitive space. And as kind of annoying as it sounds, I care the name on the dial. You know, I'm saving for a long time. I'm selling things. I'm scrimping. I'm, you know, doing whatever I can to earn enough money to buy the next piece. And if you frame it from a marketing perspective, if you've got the history, if you've got the heritage, there's a good chance that I'm going to be into it. I'm a big icon guy. You know, we're just talking about that. So like the cult classics, I mentioned, I got the Speedmaster, you know, I've got an Explorer too. You know, and I'm interested in like a Cartier tank. I'm interested in a Submariner. I'm interested in, you know, like a Reverso. Like the icons really speak to me. And so it's just really tough for those micros who are competing in that space. I feel bad for them, you know, because for me, it's a really hard sell. On top of that, I don't like having a lot of watches. I've got friends who have 40 plus watches. I've got friends who have 1 watch, and I'm somewhere in between. You know, I'm probably more comfortable in the 6 to 10 watch range. And so for something to really slot into that, they have to be really good. It has to nail a lot of my requirements. And unfortunately, I don't want to sound like I'm a brand whore or anything like that, but it matters to me. So that unpopular opinion is that I kind of struggle with micro brands.
No, I understand. I understand a couple of those points. Cause like for me, once I get past like you said, like anything more than 6 to 10, I'm like, dude, why is that thing sitting there? I haven't worn it in like 4 weeks or something, you know, and then I start to really question, like, did I really like it that much? And then, you know, the money thing, the price point to me, I understand too, because even though I haven't been doing this very long, you know, like 2019, and I probably didn't really learn about micro brands until like 2020. It seems like the prices are going up.
Oh yeah.
On micro brands. And that doesn't necessarily align with like customer service. It doesn't always align with, you know, we call legacy material, like in the Navy, right? Like, so, you know, product support or material support or, you know, even technical support, right? Like, you know, if something's $750, you know, do we expect to be able to, you know, get a replacement movement, a replacement part or whatever? Do I expect a real person to answer the phone when I call, or even for there to be a phone number to call? Because I actually have 2 micro brands that I got on a Kickstarter that I've never heard from since then. And I'm gonna have to probably sell them for like $8 on eBay because they're just collecting dust over here. So I understand what you mean too, especially as limited funds, because when you get to the point, you're like, I mean, think about it. If we're really objective about it, if a micro brand's $1,000, let's say around 750, I consider 1,000 around there. Well, man, if you just save that time double, now you're in a totally different game at $2,000. you're into solid pre-owned stuff,
Yes.
right? And if you use your resources, like people like you or, you know, whatever, you might find a good store on eBay, a reputable store, or a reputable dealer that sells pre-owned, right? That might be in your state or might be regional or might have great mail, right? And I just had an experience getting my Shogun, like some of the, I won't name the play, I'll name them later, but great customer service, wonderful customer service. And for pre-owned Shogun, I mean, if they're going to do that for a pre-owned Shogun, what are they going to do for a freaking, you know, my Pelagos FXD Black when I go get it kind of thing?
Yeah.
So it is like they have to, and I don't envy the micro brands because they have to solve a lot of problems while making some margins. But like at the same time, you know, cash is king. And when you have responsibilities like you know, and you have access to a group and maybe you handled one of these nicer pieces and you're like, I'm just going to wait. I'll save and wait because I know what I'm going to get with this. And I know that, you know, my consumer dollars are going to go the furthest that way. And I run less risk because it's all a risk. It's all a risk analysis at the end of the day, right? Like how much risk am I willing to accept at $750? Because people will say, well, it's only $750 in a micro brand instance, but that's not only $750 to everybody. That could be a lot of money for someone, right? And I hear a lot of micro brand people talk out of both sides of their mouth with that. They'll talk about how affordable they are, but then complain when something else is expensive, but then complain that they didn't get like, you know, white glove service with the more affordable thing. Like you can't have it both ways, man. This is consumerism at its best. But enough with my TED talk. Sorry about that. So, you know, through all this journey of yours, are there any things that you think enthusiasts often overlook or misunderstand when it comes to collecting timepieces?
Yes. So I think the biggest one is probably just enjoying what you have. So we obviously are always hunting for the next thing. We're always, you know, researching the next thing. I'm guilty of this. I know everyone's guilty of this. You know, I just got a piece that I've been lusting after for years. And I can't say that I haven't still looked at my search results for other watches that I have saved. And so I think the big thing here is really just enjoy what you have because, you know, we get so caught up in the hunt of the next piece, but you sometimes kind of forget and stop and appreciate the stuff that you have because every single watch in my watch box is something that I researched and I saved for and I longed for and I looked at pictures on Instagram and I looked at reviews on YouTube and all that kind of stuff because I was so excited about it. And so there was a reason why I purchased this watch. And I feel like sometimes you got to just kind of stop and pause and be like, yeah, this is a good watch. Let me make some more memories with this one before going and buying another one.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And it's, I have to stop and remind myself sometimes, like I have to pull them out and look at them and say, look, you know, this scratch you think you got, this itch you think you have, this scratches that itch, which is why you got it. Which is why I went back to the Shogun because it was like, that's the only other titanium piece I would ever want as of right now would be the FXD Black. And even then, I don't know if I can put them in the same category. You know, fixed lugs, you know, different animal, you know, I'd say different animals, same family maybe. But you know, like my Grand Seiko GMT, it's if I ever do go the Explorer 2 route, that thing's gonna go as part of it because there's no point having two of them, right? It's kind of thing. Exactly. So, yeah, it's enjoy what you have, man, because sometimes you forget. Yeah, I hear you. So another one of my favorite things is let a guest pick a topic. So is there anything that you like to discuss?
Okay, so yes, I did a little deep dive on your page, and you know, as a veteran and as a sailor specifically, my dad is actually retired Navy as well.
Nice.
I wanted to, and I know you kind of touched on this a little bit, but maybe, you know, through your travels around the world and maybe talking to some of the young sailors who are still in, I have to imagine the Navy is uniquely positioned from a watch perspective, not from like a tactical, like I'm a Green Beret and, you know, boots on the ground, but like seeing the world, going to ports that a lot of people wouldn't get to go to, and maybe having access to vintage watch shops or on leave spend that a lot of people just don't have. So I was wondering if one, we could talk about your time in the Navy and what watches were like while you were, on the carrier. Yeah, and maybe any young guys that you're talking to now, what they're interested in.
Yeah. I appreciate it. So I served from 93 to 2013. And so I will say that my generation, my first ship was a carrier, and then I was on destroyers after that, small boys.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some inspection commands in between there and all that stuff. And I will say that as far as watches go, and I've talked about this a lot, like it's been primarily G-Shocks. And I say that for enlisted people because they would sell them in the ship store.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and people that aren't even into watches will look at a G-Shock and think to themselves, that thing, whatever I'm going to do, that watch is going to take whatever I got to do and keep on working, right? And once you figure out how to set it the first time, except for DST, I mean, you're pretty much good to go, right? So that is a lot of what I saw. Now, I will say, as I've gotten experience, I've learned that, like the officer corps specifically, a lot of them, go to college and not coming straight out of not coming straight out of high school. Some of them go to the academy. They have more experience with some of these nicer timepieces, I would say. And you would notice stuff and you would see something that was cool, but even then, like we used to have a running joke, like especially as engineers, like people that work down in the pit and everything like that, we would joke around that anyone that had a nice watch on wasn't doing any work because, there's metal, there's water, there's, steam, it's just condensation, it's hot, it's nasty. Like if your watch is too nice, you're going to beat the crap out of that thing. And it's never going to make it right. Like the same joke is anyone on a roving watch wearing a turtleneck isn't really roving around standing watch because you die in that thing. But, and I also think my generation, and I'm painting with a broad brush here, a lot of us were more concerned about going out and getting drinks than we were looking for watches, which is sad. Like when I look at my first tour, like not a lot of tours, a lot of finding local places to hang out with my buddies and, eat and drink and less shopping. But I will say that I think there's more information out there now. I would say that there's, more readily available information to learn about the stuff you want to learn about. So if you're into watches, some of the places we do pull into, I would say traditionally are like not nice places.
Yeah.
Right. They're usually industrial parts of that town. And, based on where you're at determines how far you can go and everything. And you do a lot of walking around shopping, but it's almost like weird tourism part because like, you're not like in a normal, you have to kind of get lost to go find the cool part of town. But there are some places we do pull into where if you have the knowledge of what you want to find, like the duty free stuff, like especially like, Bahrain, all those places there in the Middle East, you could probably find some really, really sweet stuff. And if you're knowledgeable and like you have to fly home one time, or like you're a person who goes to, I would say like maybe the Air Force does a cool job, like, they fly, they have bases in cool parts of the world. So I would say like now with the information that's there and what they can learn and with some proper planning, you could probably get some really, really cool duty free stuff. And especially if you can plan for the trip and you're going to go on it, right? Like a year from now, I'm going to be in this place for 9 months. And when I leave, I'd want to score this really cool piece before I leave. I think that's there. And the ability to save money up, that's always been the dirty. Now technology is a little bit different now. My first deployment, like we didn't have ATM machines. We didn't have any of that stuff, right? We didn't even have email. So it's like you really had to try to spend money. Like you had to take cash out and actually spend cash in the ship store. And, it's gotten to the point now where they have like shipboard ATM cards and, it got pretty crazy, man. They even had the ATM cards with like the chips where like I'm not saying this ever happened, but like if you played cards when you weren't supposed to and bet money and you lost money to someone, you could like chip to chip transfer, right? But I definitely think the opportunities are there. I think that the ability to save money is there if you want it. Like I know plenty of people that lived really frugally on deployment and, paid bills and all kinds of stuff. You could have some really, really nice pieces. And then if you educate yourself ahead of time, you could probably come home with something really nice. And I can only imagine, like, man, if in another universe, in an alternate universe, there's a form of me that gets stationed in Japan at like 18 years old.
Oof.
Right? Comes across a Seiko book or something and, is working at Grand Seiko now by that waterfall, me and my buddy making Grand Seikos. And honestly, I want to be the case finishing guy. I don't want to be the movement guy. I want to be the dude that's doing the Zaratsu polishing
Yes.
and I have like dirty fingernails from doing all that stuff and everything, but they're definitely there. So if anyone's watching that's active duty, that's young, like I tell people all the time, like the Magic of Watches is a great book to look into. It could teach you a lot. And it's like a little esoteric technical manual. Like it's really well made. It's not over anyone's head, but then it's not insulting your intelligence either. And there's enough visual stuff in there for visual learners.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then any of the wristwatch annuals, if you just want to learn about who makes what every single year. And then, do your homework. And if you end up going somewhere cool, like if you go to Japan, could you even imagine going to Japan with a real paycheck and it's just you, like, no kids, no significant other. It's you. And you're like, you know what? I'm just going to I would literally eat ramen, like good ramen though, every day. And when I left that place, I'd leave with some like spring drive goodness.
Yeah.
Or, Creedor hand painted dials, something crazy, but I think they're there. But I still think, like you go to any of our exchanges, bro, G-Shock's king.
Yeah.
Still to this day.
Do they even carry other stuff at PXs?
Yeah.
They do? Okay.
Oh yeah. We can talk offline.
Okay.
I mean, and some are better than others. Some of the, because they have buyers like anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Some places are better others, but and it's a dirty known secret. Like I won't mind sharing it because my buddy Alex from the Army and Time podcast, Alex is like AFES is the overall, for all the exchanges. He bought a Seamaster 300, I think it was, for like $3,000.
Ooh.
With no tax, because we don't pay tax.
Ooh. Yeah. Wow.
He got that thing for a great deal and then traded it in. He sold it and got something. I can't remember what he got that was really good. He sold it and got something else that was really good. And but yeah, I mean they're there if you want them, but you have to kind of know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of those things. But anyone listening, like, do your homework, save your money, score yourself something really cool. If you can get it duty free, it's going to be awesome. And and then you, like you said, you have a story to go with it. Like,
that's awesome.
When someone whips out their submarine and they're like, oh, I got this at, whatever, not to downplay their story. You're like, yeah, well, I got this in Bahrain right after I did my deployment for 9 months, and one of them's, there was a sheikh next to me buying his, gold, whatever.
Yeah.
And, you have that cool story, but no, and that's my only regret. I mean, I really wish I had known about it ahead of time because, when I have a slightly photographic memory. So now going back through my memories, I distinctly remember being in duty free stores and seeing the watch sections. But people were buying like the duty free because you could bring home booze and you just had to log it. And then I should have like totally just besmirched the booze and walked over to the watches and got myself something, but yeah, it is what it is. But,
say la vie.
Yeah, say la vie, man. I got cool stuff now, and I get to meet cool people like you and talk to you about this stuff, so it's just as good. So I always like to mention a charity program for anyone. If they want an opportunity to mention a charity program, is there a charity you like to talk about?
Yeah, I appreciate you when you put this in there. So I'm a big fan of St. Jude's. I think a lot of people are probably big fans of St. Jude's, but when I became a father, I don't think they talk about how you kind of wear your heart outside your body once your kid's born. I don't think you realize that until you actually have a child and you're like, oh my God, like this living, breathing thing is not always in my possession. It's not always there. Like I have to protect this child as best I can. And so I can't imagine the families who are dealing with a child with some illness, God forbid, a terminal illness. And so I just love everything that St. Jude's does because they just, alleviate that stress for that family to not have to worry about the finances of it and then all the research that they're doing. So St. Jude's is big for me. And actually, speaking of which, I need to get back on it. I have been doing every 500 followers. I've been doing a giveaway. And initially it was, hey, like, follow, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I don't care about that. I'm not doing this for likes. I'm not doing this for followers. I mean, cool. Yeah, I got a good following. Be nice if I had more, but I don't really care about that. And so I have been doing kind of rolling donations. So every dollar donated to St. Jude's is an entry into winning a piece of art or something like that. So I'm overdue for another drawing, so be on the lookout for that. But yeah, so any money donated through my link would go directly to St. Jude's. I get nothing of that other than your name and how much you spent, so that I could enter you into to win some art.
Awesome. I'll make sure I include that link in the show notes. I do that for people all the time. So
I appreciate it.
I've heard nothing but good things about St. Jude's, and I just like to get the word out for all these charities, man, because there's so many of them, you know, and so many of them do good things for different groups of people. So it's nice to have. Well, I appreciate having you on, Bryan. Do you have any parting shots? Any last nuggets you want to toss out there?
Oh man, I don't think so. I mean, Jason, this has been fantastic. I appreciate you're a great interviewer. You really make people feel at ease. So I appreciate the great time and the great questions.
I appreciate it, man. And I appreciate you. It's for people that don't know, what time is it? Yeah, it's 22:07. This is the latest interview I ever had, but I tried to, it's been fun. I'm going to punch myself in the face later for forgetting the one thing I was talking about earlier, but no, I appreciate you having on, Bryan. And I love sharing just these cool corners of the watch enthusiast space with people, man. Like, and it's I always go back to the Dave Chappelle skit where the internet's a real place.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a good corner of the good mall of the internet, right? Like you're not going to get accosted by anybody in a trench coat over in this corner of the mall. So
exactly.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for giving me some of your time. And to everyone at home, hope you have a good evening. And thanks for tuning in. And remember, at watchrolling.com, you make the watch. The watch doesn't make you.